Hello! So today we are sitting on the ground at Stansted in the FlyByWire A320. This is the free study level A320 that's available for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And the reason we are here today is to have a look at the Simbrief integration with Flight Simulator. Now, the primary reason we're looking at it at all is because there is a misconception, a common misconception I want to address to do with what Simbrief can do and what it can't do for you. I think there's a huge number of people out there that are either it's too steep a hill for them to climb in terms of devoting the time to learn how some of these aircraft work, or they just don't want to, and they would rather just have an airplane where you press one big green button and it flies along and they get a slideshow to look out of the window of them happily going from the route along the route. But unfortunately it's not quite as simple as that, so I thought that's what we'd have a look at today. Okay, so what is Simbrief? Let's go and have a look at the website. You can see here's the Simbrief website. It's owned by Navigraph. So Simbrief allows you to create operational flight plans. If you've ever seen the crew getting onto an aircraft at the airport, you'll have seen they have a raft of paperwork in their hand, in a folder usually, and that's the operational flight plan. That's the full details about their route that they've just been given by the airline, and it will have all of the notices to airmen and all the details about the routes and winds aloft, and any dangerous areas they need to be aware of that are along their way. So let's go and generate one to show you what we're talking about. So if we go to the dispatch system in Simbrief, we can make a new flight. And if we scroll down, we can then fill in some of these details on this form to give it an idea of where we're flying. So we put the airline in, so that's the ICAO code for the airline. So BAW would be British Airways, for example. We can put in a flight number, we can just make it up. We can say where we're going from, so we'll use the code for Stansted, and that's the ICAO code again. And then where we're going to, so we'll use Edinburgh just for this quick example. You've seen me fly to Edinburgh in videos in the past perhaps. So then we can choose the airframe, and again there are many already listed. So the A320 Neo is there, the A20N, and it's already done it. This is how quick it is. So it's figured out the route, and you can see it on a map already drawn. Exactly how it would get from Stansted to Edinburgh, following corridors through the sky with a standard instrument departure involved, and a standard approach route, and lots of waypoints along the way that perhaps even follow corridors. Okay, so if you wanted to turn this into an operational flight plan, you click on Generate Flight, and it warns you because you're only allowed to have one at a time. So we'll say yes. So it gets on and does it, and it's busy compiling the operational flight plan for us. And you can see now we have got the full operational flight plan just covering the route that was sketched out to us, and we can pan around in the map. It's very clever. But here we go, look, this is the raft of paperwork that the crew, look how much of it there is. There's probably 20-30 pages of it, and it's got all the details of everything about the route, all of the notices to airmen, all of the safety notices, everything you could possibly need to navigate from A to B basically. So how do we get this into the aircraft then? So we've done our bit in Simbrief. You'll notice when you scroll down to the end of the operational flight plan, you can actually download the flight plan now as a PLN file, for example, for FS 2020. But that's not what we're going to do. We're going to get the aeroplane to talk directly to Simbrief and come and fetch this. So we'll just leave that there. So we come back over to the A320 and let's go and have a look at it. So if we look overhead, this is cold and dark at the moment. We've not done anything with the aeroplane. We're going to turn the batteries on overhead, and we're going to turn on the external power, and we'll go and switch on the ADIRS to align itself. That's the inertial navigation system. Okay, so everything's coming up to speed around the cockpit. So let's go and turn the brightness up on the screens. We're not actually going to be using anything, but we'll just at least make it look presentable around the cockpit. I've got it set to realistic in the aeroplane, so this is going to take 7 or 8 minutes for the inertial navigation system to align. He says famously, as it does it very, very quickly. Oh my word. Anyway, that's completely thrown me that started so quickly. We're going to take you can see the backup attitude indicator hasn't, so it isn't actually working. It's just the screens have booted. Okay, let's go and brighten up the engineering screens as well. So, how do we get Simbrief to work in the A320? There's a couple of things we need to do. So in the Fly tab, I think some people call this, or just the tablet, click on the cog at the bottom left, and on the 4th section then you've got the ATSU AOC page. So AOC stands for Aeronautical Operational Control, and that's the data communication between the aircraft and the ground. ATSU is the Air Traffic Services Unit, and that's built by Honeywell on the Airbus, and it's actually, you can think of it as kind of an integration layer, and it allows different aircraft to talk to the same ground system, to give them a common language between each other. So when we click on that, we get some details. We can ignore everything except the bit at the bottom, and there's the clever bit, the Simbrief username or pilot ID. So if we come into here, you can see there's a number in there at the moment. If I type my username in and press enter, it's popped up and says it's validated it, and it's turned it into a number. So what's that number that it's thrown in there? If we go and look in Simbrief itself, and you'll notice while we're looking at an operational flight plan, there's a button on the far right saying My Account. So we're going to click on it, and you can see there's all the details of my account in Simbrief, and there's my username, but there's no sign of that number. If we click on Simbrief data, there's the number. Okay, that's the number that is being reflected in here. So all it really is your internal account ID for Simbrief. Okay, so we've done that. This is important, you have to fill that in, otherwise the Simbrief integration won't work, because when the aircraft goes and asks Simbrief for the flight plan, it won't know who to ask on behalf of. Okay? So we can come up here, and there's 2 parts to this system. We can have the tablet fill itself with data, and the MCDU. They're 2 separate systems, they don't talk to each other. So let's say import the Simbrief data, and there's our flight that we've programmed from EGSS to EGPH. Yeah, but that's not the actual one we want to do today, because we're going to jump back out. We want to go from Stansted over to Dusseldorf, and the reason I'm coming back into LittleNavMap is I want to show you the Simbrief integration here as well. So we've programmed this in LittleNavMap using the usual routine, and if you're not sure about that, you can obviously, I've got a video on YouTube, you can go and look at it, at how to do routes in LittleNavMap. So we can go to the file menu in LittleNavMap, and we can export the flight plan to Simbrief. There we go, export flight plan to Simbrief, and it will say export it to Simbrief ? It's asking that we have a logged in session in Simbrief in the browser already, otherwise when we click export it would go to nowhere basically. It would go, the Simbrief website would redirect to the login page, and it would lose track of what we'd asked it to do. So we'll say export. So it's popped open a new tab in the browser, and we've got a new route from EGSS to EDDL, so that's Stansted over to Dusseldorf, which is the one that's in here. So we have to generate flight again. Yep. So it's busy making a brand new operational flight plan. Give it a few seconds, and it's done it. There's our operational flight plan, and it looks broadly the same as that one. To get a cleaner view of it, we can look at it in Navigraph as well. So there you go. So the flight plan we have here looks the same, yes? Okay, so now we've generated this, we can come back into the aeroplane, and we could just say import it again. And it's changed look from EGSS to EDDL. So we're going to Dusseldorf now, and notice it's got the details there of the route, which is great. So the next thing to do is, how do we program the actual aeroplane to do this route? Because if we go and look in the FMC, or FMGC as it calls it here, and clear the message from the bottom, and then go and look in the flight plan page, there's no flight plan yet. Nothing has been done. So what we do is we go to the MCDU menu, and you'll see ATSU appear again. Remember, ATSU is the Air Traffic Services Unit, and within the ATSU there is the AOC menu, which is the Aeronautical Operational Control. That's the aeroplane talking to the ground. And within here we can go to init press, and there's this init review page. We can say init data request, and it's pulled in the data from Simbrief straight into the aircraft. So we come back into here and we can look on the flight plan now, and it hasn't done it. I've forgotten something. What have I forgotten? On the init page, sorry. On the init page, there's two parts to this. You go and do that data request in, so we went to MCDU, we went to ATSU, we went to AOC, we went to init press, and we did a data request which fetched the route. Okay? Then you go back to init and you do an init request in here, and that fetches the flight plan. So it's saying flight number in use, take no notice of that. And if we look in the flight plan now, there's that flight plan that we programmed. So here's the important bit, look. It has not got the whole flight plan. It's got a discontinuity in the middle of it. It hasn't got the SID and the star programmed at all. So pulling in from Simbrief is only actually going to pull in the middle of the route. All it's got is CLN, NIC, and then nothing else. It's just got that and that. So it has completely disregarded the standard instrument departure and the standard approach route. So what you have to then do is you have to know how this works. So you have to go in to the flight plan page, you click on the departure airfield, click on departure, and you fill in the missing bits. So this is how we are going to leave Stansted. So we're leaving on runway 22, and we're doing the CLN2E standard instrument departure, and we insert those into our route. Then we click on EDDL, we click on arrival. Now let's go and double check. We're coming into runway 23 left, the LMA 8G approach. So 23 left, and scroll these through, LMA 8G, and we insert that. And now if we go back and look at our flight plan, we can scroll through it. It will still have a discontinuity in the middle of it, but we've got the full standard instrument departure up to Clacton, and then we've got the rest of the approach. But notice there's two discontinuities now, so we have to clear both of them. So we click on clear on this one. Click on clear, so it says clear here, and then remove that one. Then scroll further through and we click on clear again, and we clear that one. Okay, so now we have a flight plan that resembles what we saw. So you can see it here, look. If we go and zoom out slightly and put this on plan mode and zoom out a bit further so we can actually see things, it's going to centered on NIC at the moment. So if we scroll up and down while we're in plan mode on the flight display, on the navigation display, we can actually see the legs of the route, and it looks, that's the end that represents here, look. So you can see it. So the takeaway here is the import from Simbrief doesn't bring with it the SID and the star, the standard instrument departure and the standard approach route. It only brings the basics of the legs in between. Okay, it doesn't have the runways either. So you do have to know some basics about flight planning with the flight management computer for the Simbrief integration to work. So all it's really bringing is the route between the SID and the star. Okay, so there's something else you need to know about as well, and that is when you program a route in Simbrief. So let's go and do a new one again. So if we do a new flight and say British Airways, for example, 123, and say EGSS to EGPH, or we do the same trick as we did earlier. We go to LittleNavMap and we say export directly to Simbrief. So we do it, Simbrief pops up, and look, it's lost its login. You must be logged in, so we'll log in using Navigraph and it will have forgotten everything. So it just shows you the logins are not foolproof, and it's still got the details, which is good. So that has held on to them actually better than we thought it might. So we got the details here. It's lost some of them, but you'll notice down here it's saying your route is valid. I have a paid Navigraph account, so this really comes down to something that some people don't know about. The simulator, when you are programming navigation waypoints, each aircraft potentially, usually it's the simulator itself, but some aircraft have their own database of the waypoints, the runways, the airfields, and the ILS frequencies. They have their own database. So usually it's the simulator for the Asobo aircraft, but some of the more study level aircraft have their own. So the PMDG ones, for example, have their own database. The Aerosoft ones typically have their own database as well. If you want an aircraft to have the up-to-date data, if you have a paid Navigraph account, Navigraph can update the simulator for you. Not only that, remember the data in LittleNavMap comes from the simulator. But also, if you have Navigraph, then LittleNavMap understands it, and you get an AIRAC cycle. So an AIRAC cycle is the version of the database. So in other words, you can make sure that LittleNavMap agrees with the aircraft. And unfortunately, and this is the real catch, if you don't have a paid Navigraph account, the data in Simbrief is intentionally old. Now over time, the waypoints and the frequencies and the procedures in the sky change, which is why we get different versions of the database every so often, because they're brought up to date with the real world. Unfortunately, if you are using a free Simbrief account, it's an old version of the database, so you may put in a completely valid route for today, but it won't work in Simbrief because it will say that parts of the route don't exist, for example, or don't exist as far as the old version of the database is concerned. Yeah, and the same is true of other aircraft. So if you have like an Aerosoft aeroplane, for example, which commonly have their own database, you may find that you can do something in Simbrief that the aeroplane won't let you do. Yeah, and it will come up with lots of discontinuities in the flight plan because it doesn't have particular waypoints or SIDs or stars even. So it's just something to keep in mind. So that's half the reason. That's why there are two levels of Navigraph account. The cheaper Navigraph accounts just give you the data. The more expensive ones give you the navigation software with all of the plates and all the rest of it. Okay? So you can see it's even projecting the aircraft position onto the plan in exactly the same way that we can do with LittleNavMap. So it's doing the same trick. So if we go to the tools and connect flight simulator and connect, I'm surprised it hasn't turned up actually. Where's my aeroplane gone? Am I being a bit silly? There should be it's lost the internet connection, hasn't it? I think it's because I had a problem earlier. If I go and restart, this is a bit of a trick. If you restart LittleNavMap, it'll re-establish the connection to the simulator. There we go. So I'm actually on the ground now. But anyway, so yeah, the real takeaway this evening was don't expect wonders from the Simbrief integration. Yes, it's great and it can pull the route in, but it doesn't do everything for you. You still need to understand how the flight management computer works to go and put the missing pieces of the flight plan back in. Yeah, so it's the runway choice, the SID, the star you're going to have to go and do. The nice thing though that I haven't touched on, if you do have the Simbrief integration, when you go and look in the init page, there's the wind temp section. Because we've got Simbrief in play, we can do a wind request, and we've got all of the winds aloft programmed in, so therefore the flight management computer is now enormously accurate at predicting speeds, times, bearings, the rest of it. It's because it's got the accurate wind data. Okay, so in the real aircraft they would look at the operational flight plan and program these in, but we can cheat because we've got Simbrief and we can pull them straight into the aircraft. I mean, obviously in the real plane they have got ATSU, they have got AOC, but also they have the backup of the printed operational flight plan. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully that explains some problems you've had with the simulator potentially over time. So yeah, the takeaway, as I said, is that don't expect wonders from the Simbrief integration. It's not going to do it all for you. Okay, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll see you again soon.